My slippers are falling apart.
You could just have bare feet.
I know, but
I never wear shoes if I can avoid it.
I don't have slippers.
Yeah.
I was going to say something, but I'll save it for on air.
Okay.
It is Thursday, the 1st of June 2017, and you're listening to Skeptics with a K, the podcast for science, reason and critical thinking. Skeptics with a K is a production of the Merseyside Skeptics Society, a non-profit organisation for the promotion of scientific skepticism on Merseyside, around the UK and internationally. I am your host, Mike Hall. With me today is Marsh.
Hello.
And Alice.
Hello.
So, elephant in the room. That Manchester thing happened.
Yeah, that's pretty awful.
That was fucking horrible, wasn't it?
If you have listeners in Manchester, if anyone knows anyone affected, then you've got our sympathies and support, basically. Yeah, geez.
And we've got a lot of love for Manchester because, we're quite good friends with the Manchester Skeptics. We get along with those guys very well. And, of course, we hold QED in Manchester as well. True. So we've got a certain amount of affection and a little bit of
we've had listeners saying to us, are you guys all right?
We have. So,
which is kind of interesting too.
We should say to the listeners, as far as we're aware, we're all good and everyone we know is good. I know Jeff from Manchester Skeptics, his chambers, because he's a criminal barrister, his chambers aren't actually far from the MEN arena. But he was working from home. He was way outside the blast radius anyway, but he was working from home that day, so I had no idea that anything had happened until the following morning. But yeah, shocking stuff going on.
It is. It's one of those things that, as we're recording it now, because we're recording this a week and a bit ago, because we're recording this, as Mike will get to, we're recording this episode super early. By the time this comes out, there may be all sorts of other details about what was actually kind of behind all this and what was going on and everything like that, and whether there was anybody else involved. So we don't know any of that detail.
We don't know any of that at that point, no.
So we're still in the situation where people are kind of speculating and asking what this means for this, that, and the other. So, but I think the only thing you can really say is sympathy to those who were affected by it. Really,
absolutely. But we are recording this a week and a bit ago.
And why is that, Mike?
Because I'm going on holiday.
Where are you right now?
As this goes out, I will be either on a beach in Tenerife or in an air-conditioned hotel room having escaped a beach in Tenerife.
Gotcha, yeah.
Going, it's too hot out there.
It will be hot.
I can't fucking handle it. I've never done a kind of cliched hot Spanish holiday ever.
Really?
In my life. So it's like...
Just like a hot beachy type holiday, sit by the pool.
Yeah, I've never done that. It's all-inclusive as well, so it's all the drinks and all the food.
All-inclusive.
I'm going the full-on cliched holiday.
Are you going to be one of those people who went to that island in Greece on an all-inclusive holiday and then went to a restaurant and thought they could just walk out without paying because they were all-inclusive? And the restaurant were like, we're not part of your resort. We're an actual business. Yeah. You're a dickhead.
All-inclusive doesn't mean the entire island.
Yeah, exactly.
It only means like the bits of it that your resort is on. So I'm going on to a hot, sweaty Spanish holiday where I'm hoping to not leave the confines of the hotel at any point and just sit there and so. But I've had to
What are you going to do?
Well, I've had to buy T-shirts. Just for my own health and sanity.
Yes.
I've had to buy T-shirts. I got black, white, and red T-shirts, obviously, so they're still on brand.
Yeah. That's good. Just plain.
Just plain T-shirts,
like
nothing
a slogan, a symbol, a band.
No, I was going. I was.
You're thinking Doctor Who T-shirts.
Doctor Who T-shirts were top of my list,
obviously.
In fairness, but when I put in my order of stuff for like sun cream and shit, I forgot to order Doctor Who T-shirts. So I thought, all right, well, I'll just go to the shops and see what's going on. So I'm wandering around the shops looking for T-shirts, and there's things like, there's a Marvel T-shirt, and get a Marvel. It's like, you know what? I love Marvel films. I don't love them enough to put them on my chest.
No.
So
I've got a Spider-Man T-shirt.
Well, I know you do. You've got a Spider-Man morph suit because I bought it for you.
I have got a Spider-Man morph suit. I've never worn that, oddly enough. That one's never come up.
I am simultaneously disappointed and not surprised that you have not worn the Spider-Man morph suit. I ended up just with some plain T-shirts, but on brand. On colour. On colour brand. I bought flip-flops.
You bought flip-flops.
I've got
You're
flip-flops.
You're going to hate flip-flops.
I don't like
Have
flip-flops.
you ever worn flip-flops?
I'm not for many a year. I seem to remember walking in flip-flops, and presumably where the name flip-flops come from is when you walk, it kind of goes clunk, clack, because your foot hits the floor and then the bottom of the flip-flop comes up and hits you on the bottom of the heel.
Yeah.
And so it goes flap.
I can't wear them. I can't wear flip-flops. I hate them.
But it's either that or burning my feet on the scorching hot pavement.
Or another kind of sandal.
Besides the...
You could go for another kind of sandal.
A sandal?
They might chafe.
Crocs. I could wear Crocs.
You couldn't wear Crocs. They don't exist anymore.
And get Croc-shaped...
You could get some 90s glitter jelly shoes. I'm sure you can get those at the minute.
And swimming costume. I've got a swimming costume because there's a pool. So.
By which you mean like trunks?
Yeah.
Not like a full one piece.
I have
Victorian one piece.
joked for many a year that I would get a Victorian one piece with a straw boat and an arse flap, but I've just gone
I don't know where you get one of them.
Some regular swimming shorts is what I've gone for. So it means we're recording a little bit early.
We are.
Because I'm
on a beautiful sunny day.
I'm going to be in Tenerife.
That's all right.
I'm hoping not to come back with a tan. I've bought, factor 8 million sun cream, or as I call it, a leather jacket.
Yes. Yeah.
I've bought like scary sun cream, but I bought the sun cream that Alice recommended because you recommended
I
me.
recommended the P20 stuff.
P20 sun cream.
It's amazing.
P20.
You never have to reapply. You put it on in the morning, and it kind of like reacts with your skin, and it's waterproof, and you don't need to touch it for the rest of the day.
I've never.
And
heard
I
of
have
this.
never been burnt when wearing it. Because it's just...
And you're very pale skinned.
And I'm very
Do you burn
pale
easy?
skinned. I burn easy without sun cream. I don't burn super easily, and I heal fairly quickly. But yeah, that stuff's amazing.
So I bought some of that, like factor 50, slap of that on
My
the fucking
mum
morning.
once, when she went to Turkey, she missed a bit because it's a really oily consistency, so that you're supposed to get really good coverage, but it's also easy to miss a bit. And she missed a bit on her shin, and then lay out in the sun for a few hours
a stripe.
and had blisters.
Oh my God.
On her shin, completely fine everywhere else. No burn, no red, no nothing, but blisters on her shin.
I always burn.
No.
I'm terrible. I always...
Should we try the P20 stuff?
I might try
It's
the
good.
P20 stuff. The worst thing for me is applying
It does
sun
stain
cream.
your white clothes, though. You have to be careful of that. Sorry,
Does it? Yeah, the worst thing for me is applying sun cream to Nicola's back where she can't reach. Because then it's just like, if I burn and it's my fault because I didn't put it on in the right way, that's fine. If Nicola burns and it's in the areas that she put it on and she put it the right way, that's fine. But if Nicola burns because I insufficiently covered areas of her and she burns, I feel terribly guilty and she makes me feel terribly guilty.
You not thought about just like leaving the word marsh exposed on her back, so she just burns and then tans in your name.
Yeah, that
Just
would be a
for-
good
just
idea.
for a laugh.
Branding my wife. I
Yeah.
don't think that would
Or
go
do
down
it like
well
a
with her.
football jersey.
Yeah,
just
and a number.
Just put a number and throp across the top.
Yeah,
there.
that would be good. That would be very good.
I'm sure Nicola would appreciate
She'd
it.
love that.
I'm sure she'd be
all
well
over
up for that.
Speaking of sunburn, we've got our charity walk coming up, and I get burnt at that every
We
year.
have. That's
Yeah.
a good
'Cause I
segue.
forget to put sun cream on every year, and I always get burnt.
I'll be bringing my hat. Bought a new hat.
Bought a new hat.
You'll forget the new hat.
my stupid
and you'll
baldy
burn
head.
your head again.
That's
'cause
true.
You burn pretty much every year
I
as
do
well.
burn every year at the charity walk.
So what are the details of the charity walk, Alice?
It is the 11th of June.
11th of June.
Which is a Sunday.
Which is
and
10 days from now.
we are raising money for Mersey Aid refugee support. And we will be walking from Otters Pool Promenade back into town along the waterfront, which will be nice.
Good. So anybody in Liverpool is welcome to join us.
And we'll be putting the details of how you can sponsor us if you want to give some money to Mersey Aid refugee support in the show notes. So what have you guys been doing? I'm currently on holiday. What are you guys currently doing? Actually, throw forward. Tell us some anecdotes that haven't happened yet.
What are we currently doing? I'm not sure I'm currently doing anything. I don't think I've got an exciting week.
I'm literally not going to be doing anything. I finish in work this week.
Yeah, you'll be unemployed by then.
I'll be unemployed.
You will
Damn
be
adult you.
a bum. Official, formal
I
bum.
will have just I will be about to go home for the weekend when this comes out.
Yeah.
To spend some time with my family, and then we'll have the election within a week.
God.
Oh, Christ, yeah, I forgot about the election.
Yeah, I forgot all that existed.
Oh.
Sometimes the beauty world is a reliable place for enjoyable woo. So this week I thought I'd have a look at some of the beauty treatments recommended for this year.
There is a terrific amount of woo in the
There's so much. It's
kind
a
of
really
beauty thing, isn't there?
great place to look for bollocks.
I'm always when I'm like shopping with Katie and she'll pick up some sort of face cream or whatever, and I'll go, don't buy that, it's woo. Look, it's got look.
You don't have a choice.
It says it's match, but that's what she says. Is she says everything in this
Everything
aisle
is woo.
has
This is the
got
woo aisle.
some bollocks claim on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but they don't. She said, I'm not buying it for the woo. I'm buying it because it does this, and this, not for the magic claim.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but they don't know that. They don't know you're not buying the claim. They think they put the claim on and sales go up and they go, great.
But what else are you going to do?
But there's literally nothing else you can do. Unless you slather your face in unbranded E45 emollient.
Just lard.
Yeah.
Lard's the only way. But then again, you'll just get woo lard. That's what will happen, is you'll start putting woo claims on the side of a block of lard.
Woo lard. You have woo bloody coconut oil.
That's true. There is woo coconut oil.
Lard, high in antioxidants.
Yeah.
Mops up free radicals.
Yeah, vegan lard.
Gluten-free lard.
Organic gluten-free lard. Actually, you could probably say it's gluten-free. I bet it fucking says it's gluten-free.
One of the ones I came across was Nails Inc., which make nail varnishes.
Is that Nails Inc. or Nails Inc.?
Nails Inc.
Okay, it's not like ZINC.
Nails Incorporated, I guess.
But surely it's a cunning pun.
You think?
Nails Inc. and they make coloured stuff for your nails.
It's never crossed my
They
mind
might not make it
before.
zinky. Oh, you mean ink as an INK?
Yes.
I was thinking of ZINC.
No.
Like galvanising
not nails.
your nails.
They do a kale superfood base coat.
Is that called Kale Zinc?
It is.
Is it really?
I think
No! Oh, God.
It might be.
Oh,
I can't remember,
God.
but there's definitely something to do with kale in its name.
Oh, God.
But this year they've designed a mindful manicure, a nail polish which is apparently infused with crystals.
Right.
They say on their website, in a busy world, many are seeking spiritual healing through mindful pursuits such as yoga, meditation, and therapeutic crystals. With their own bioelectrical field or vibrations, it has been proven that natural crystals have the ability to affect our energy levels, even known to stimulate and speed up cell regeneration.
Wow, cell regeneration.
Nails Inc. introduced the world's first revolutionary crystal-infused nail polish range. This mood-enhancing nail polish has been developed in a range of iridescent shades, each with their own properties. Even if you're a non-believer, this limited edition range offers beautiful, on-trend shades with a feel-good message.
Oh, God. See, the thing that pissed me off most about that was infused. I don't think you infuse a liquid with crystals. I don't think that's infused. I think that's like gritted. I don't know. I don't think it's infused at that point, is it? How do you infuse something?
They'll be going in as a powder or as a dust rather than actual
just
crystals.
bits that stick out that you sort of point on. It's like sandpaper.
Or they could do it like a cup of tea. So they just leave the crystal in for 10 minutes and then pull it back out again.
Dip the crystal. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And they infuse it.
Yeah, it's a brew.
I've tried to do Nails Inc. Nail varnishes for the podcast before, but the problem is they don't make any concrete claim. Well, they make these concrete claims, but they don't base it on anything. They're really super vague. It has the ability to affect our energy levels and speed up cell regeneration, but they don't reference that. They don't make anything concrete that you can actually look at.
And it's not like they're saying it will change. It will speed up the cell regeneration in your cuticles so that you will recover from
They're just
blank.
super vague about it. So I can't actually talk about it. Although I am considering getting in touch with them and saying, this is bollocks. Really, please don't.
You should actually get in touch and see what they say.
They're a huge company.
What you say, it helps cell regeneration. What cells and what makes you think you can make that clear in marketing? What evidence you got?
Because all you can say in response to those kind of claims is, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, that's bollocks.
Yeah.
Because they haven't cited anything.
No.
They haven't suggested a mechanism.
Yeah.
All you could say is, it improves this. No, it doesn't.
I don't know if they're allowed to say that in terms of the ASA code, like the CAP code in that case, because they're still making a claim that it regenerates some cells. I don't think they're allowed to do that without evidence. I think if you can test that on evidence, then they might have to stop making that claim.
I don't know
possibly.
what cell regeneration means. Especially on your nails. Do I want my nails to regenerate?
I mean, it's not saying that it's
you can't regenerate your nails anyway because they're protein.
It's keratin, isn't it?
It's not a cell. Like, your nails aren't a cell. Under the nail bed, there are cells, and the cuticles and the skin around your nails, but the nail itself,
So even assuming it does regenerate cells, that's great, but I'm painting it on nails.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose they might say it's regenerating the cuticle bit and this there because it's in contact.
But if you painted your nails well, you're not touching the cuticles.
Yeah, don't paint your cuticle.
Right. Okay, really. I thought you'd kind of get down to that bit.
You get down to it, but usually you try and avoid actually touching it. And even if you did, you're only going to touch the dry bit at the very, very top.
Oh, yeah. I've never painted my nails, oddly enough.
So I moved on from the Nails Inc. Claim and looked at other weird beauty treatments and found one called Glow Biotics.
Glow Biotics. GLOW?
Yeah.
Okay.
Biotics Md are a company producing beauty products infused, again, apparently with probiotics.
Everything is infused.
They dip the yogurt in it.
They just mean mixed.
Well, actually, so they base the name on it sounding like probiotics, and they talk about probiotics on the website, but they're not strictly infusing anything with probiotics. What this company's products contain are probiotic-derived bioactives, or PDBS.
It's certainly some kind of BS.
Which is what they've shortened that down to.
Gotcha, okay.
Because putting probiotics in a beauty treatment is actually quite difficult. The NHS Choices website describes probiotics as probiotics are live bacteria and yeasts promoted as having various health benefits. They're usually added to yogurts or taken as food supplements and are often described as good or friendly bacteria. They go on to explain what I suspect a lot of us know by now, that probiotics are useful to help re-establish gut flora after some types of illness, particularly those treated with antibiotics. But they also explain that a lot of the health claims that are attributed to probiotics are false. But their definition also explains why they might be hard to put into beauty treatments. Typically, skin products are quite expensive, especially when they have these bold claims associated with them, and typically people keep them for a long time, even longer than the usually recommended 6-month expiry date. Probiotics are living bacteria or yeasts. Generally, they're not going to survive very long in a moisturiser.
Well, could they not actually start consuming the moisturiser?
They're going to grow out of control and be horrific.
Because like a moisturiser, what is that? A lot of that? It's kind of like a creamy type stuff.
The reason you have a 6-month expiry date on a lot of cream products is because bacteria will grow on them. Mascaras you should get rid of after 3 months because bacteria will grow in mascara.
And then you rub it in your eyes.
And then you put in it by your eyes. Moisturisers are usually 6 months because bacteria will grow in moisturiser.
And especially when they put bacteria in the moisturiser specifically.
Yes, specifically.
Yeah.
But it's good bacteria, so it's fine. More of it, the better.
Right.
Also, don't you typically consume probiotics?
Yeah.
Is there any topical application of a probiotic?
Well, apparently.
Is there any legitimate topical application of probiotic?
I haven't looked into that enough, but
because you use probiotics to support, as you say, the healthy bacteria often in your gut. There aren't many other places where you have employ bacteria, because we employ bacteria to do stuff in our stomach. But it's not like my left arm is covered in a healthy bacteria that enables my arm to do something good, does it?
We'll come back to bacteria on the skin.
Okay.
So generally, they're not going to survive long in a moisturiser, or it's generally not going to be a good idea to have bacteria in your moisturiser. But Biotics have got it covered. They say probiotic-derived bioactives, PDBS, are produced when body-friendly bacteria is put through a special fermentation process. The end result is a non-living bioactive that does not need to be refrigerated. These powerful bioactives are then extracted and infused into Biotics Md formulas rather than formulae, for topical use. This is the probiotic technology that helps to support the skin's immune system, strengthening your skin's ability to repair and defy the aging process.
So they start off with a probiotic. They kill it.
Yeah.
They use something to do with the dead bacteria.
Yeah.
And then they call that a probiotic.
Yeah. A probiotic-derived BS.
It's probiotic-derived BS. It's BS that originally involves some probiotics somewhere. It's still definitely BS. It's just derived from the probiotics. Gotcha. I mean, they're being honest to a certain degree there.
They don't explain what they mean by bioactive. The definition of this word is something having a biological effect, but that means the word can be applied to all sorts of stuff. There's plenty of things that have biological effects, but I wouldn't call bioactive. The problem is the company has fundamentally misunderstood how probiotics work. They say, we already know that internal probiotics have been proven to help with the health of the digestive and immune system. And due to modern technology, we can now extract the most important components of these bacteria for topical use.
What? No, that makes no sense.
The most important component of probiotics are the living bacteria.
Yeah, it's bacteria. It's what they do.
That's the point. That's the point in probiotics, is that you've got live bacteria in there. They help the gut work effectively. And even if you do put them on your skin's not going to digest stuff. It's completely unnecessary.
When they're extracting the most important bit, The most important bit is that they're alive. Are they extracting life? They figured out how to extract life from a bacteria, and they're just now injecting life into
they
face
start
creams.
with a live bacteria, and then they removed the life from
true.
the bacteria.
They've derived life. These people are monsters.
So what do Biotics Md claim their probiotic-derived BS-infused products will do? They have a list on their website. Topical probiotics are proven to help reverse problematic skin conditions, reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles, detoxify stressed acne-prone skin, rehydrate skin for a softer, smoother texture, provide powerful antioxidant activity, and increase oxygen for a healthy, rosy glow.
Okay, so it's all oxygen-based or toxic kind of based or stress. Can skin be stressed? How is your skin stressed?
That's a hard day at the office.
It depends on your definition of stress.
Yeah, I guess that's the case.
There are many different definitions of stress in biology.
Are any of them related to skin in a plausible way?
You could have mechanical stress on the skin. You could have...
The mechanical stress is that it's stretched?
Yeah.
Do you think that's what they mean?
No.
Is that it will replenish your stretched skin?
There are skin conditions where you might have increased inflammation, which would be a type of biological stress.
I think you're reaching.
Those are definitions of stress. That's not what they mean.
Yeah.
But those are...
Steel Manning, Marsh. She's
Steel Manning. She's Steel Manning, absolutely.
But that's definitely not what they mean. And especially when they're talking about detoxifying it and it referring to acne-prone skin being stressed. Acne can often be caused by the presence of bacteria.
That's true.
Yeah, that's not ideal, is it?
Yeah.
That you're slathering on your skin. Nice.
And I don't think the friendly bacteria is going to fight the bad bacteria. That's not how it works. Like, you're bringing in a bacteria to fight the bacteria, and then they duke it out and get rid of all the bad guys. Like when you see kind of adverts for Domestos.
Well, the way it works in your gut flora, from what I understand, is all the bacteria are killed off by antibiotics. Mm-hmm. And so you consume a probiotic, which means they colonize your gut, which means there's no resources available for
bad bacteria.
Pathogenic bacteria to come along and start to consume resources.
It's competition rather than fighting.
Yeah. Not sure that will work on your skin.
No, and if you are already healthy, would taking a probiotic help?
No.
Just to be clear, because you've not come across it, unless you have some other kind of condition or you've had antibiotics which have to wipe out.
Yeah.
But if you haven't recently had a course of antibiotics,
there's no reason to take probiotics.
No, it's not like having a lot of probiotics is that
for a normal, healthy gut, there's no need to take probiotics.
And even in the case where you're replacing gut flora that's being killed by an antibiotic, or it's the equivalent of replacing a rainforest with a lawn.
Yeah.
You've got a huge amount of diversity in your gut flora normally, and you're replacing it with bifidus digestivum.
Yes, yeah, I like bifidus digestivum. That is good.
Their claims are very vague and unhelpful, but there is a science page on the website with a section on PDBS.
Okay.
I'm going to read that section in its entirety. The skin is a remarkable organ that comprises the second largest structure of our body's immune system. A significant portion of the skin's immune system, just like our gut, consists of the residence of mostly beneficial bacteria that sit on the surface of the skin, acting as its first line of environmental defence.
Really? Isn't it just as soon as you get a bath, then all that's gone? Because you just mechanically scrub all that bacteria off?
Most people don't do so much of the mechanical stuff. Most people aren't very good at cleaning themselves, it turns out.
But isn't part of the issue that we transmit diseases a lot through our skin? Because we'll touch something, get a lot of crap on our hands, and then rub your eyes or whatever, and that's how you end up with a lot of kind of infections. Mm-hmm. Because there isn't this magical glow of
your skin does have a lot of bacteria on it.
Yeah,
that's not a claim that we're going to challenge.
No, I get that bit, but that bacteria, your skin doesn't have good bacteria that will fight off bad bacteria, does it?
It has good bacteria. We'll come to it.
Okay, no, that's fine.
She's professional, Marsh.
This is the skin's microbiome. When the microbiome ecosystem is off balance, our skin becomes more susceptible to invading pathogens, environmental aggressors, and premature aging.
Is this them or you?
Them.
This is still them, okay.
When probiotic-derived bioactives produced when body-friendly bacteria is put through a special fermentation process are applied to the skin, a myriad of beneficial skin health pathways are stimulated. They alter the skin's ratio of commensal to pathogenic microorganisms. They increase skin barrier integrity while optimizing collagen and elastin levels. They also decrease negative responses in the skin, making PDBS remarkable in their availability to drastically improve the health and appearance of all skin types.
Right. Now, you paused over some of those words because they were ridiculous to you. And that's what made me realise that some of those bits were bullshit. But the reasoning as to why those bits are bullshit, I'm not clear on. Mike, were you good with all that?
I'm letting Alice do a thing rather than preemptively ask questions she already has answers to.
Okay.
They're mostly not wrong in saying that the skin microbiome can form part of the immune system. Mostly the bacteria on our skin is mostly just harmless and it just hangs out on the skin. But some bacteria do help us to prime the immune system to recognise pathogens, so it does have a use. But since they don't tell us what the bioactives specifically are, nor how they might promote the bacteria on the skin, I can't see how they can possibly claim that they will do something as specific as stimulate a myriad of beneficial skin health pathways.
Yeah, that is pretty specific.
Very specific.
A full myriad. How many is in a myriad?
There is a specific number that's a myriad.
Is there really?
It's 10,000 or something like that is a
Really?
myriad. Yeah.
Really?
It's
No one uses it to mean 10,000.
No, nobody
though.
uses that anymore. I saw something about this recently on the YouTube channel Numberphile, where they talked about it, that a myriad was a thing. Also a milliard, I think.
Ooh.
Was
A milliard. That's a million
milliard
ducks.
Was a
million male ducks.
was a thing. Just having Googled it, it was 10,000 originally. Myriad.
Yeah, no one uses it to mean that.
No, they don't.
Specifically means 10,000. A myriad, a milliard, and a million.
So yeah, they're making some very bizarre claims about optimizing collagen and elastin. We've talked before about why it might not be helpful to change your collagen levels in the skin, and why I don't see how anything they could possibly have put in this cream would affect your collagen levels. I've never found a skin product that claims to do it that has any justifiable reason for making that claim. I think it would be very strange for some random thing extracted from bacteria to have to actually do that. It would be great if a bioactive could do all of those things, but they're not telling us what the actual ingredient is. They're calling it a probiotic-derived bioactive. They're not saying what that bioactive is. They're not telling us what it's doing. They've got no information on it whatsoever.
It's a life. It's the raw essence of life.
It's life essence.
Raw essence of life. The other things on their science webpage include retinols, which I've discussed before, probably do help with some elements of skin anti-aging depending on dose and use and the person's skin. Then they go on to talk about their use of smart peptides or lipo-oligopeptides, under which they explain all about proteins and receptors and signaling. They explain how peptides bind to receptors, which is true, but only to specific peptide receptors that have specific functions. But they explain, operating at the receptor site of the cell, peptides work in a sort of lock and key fashion, the peptide being the key and the receptor of interest on the surface of the cell, the lock. Once lock and key meet up, it signals the nucleus of the cell to cause a change in genetic expression, which will release messenger molecules from the cell to all neighbouring cells, which isn't incorrect, but it depends entirely on specific cellular and locational spatiotemporal context, which we could possibly assess if they told us what peptides they're using. Instead, they say, skin communication has now begun. Biotics Md utilizes a variety of lipo-oligopeptides, peptides with fatty acids attached for better delivery, designed for a variety of specific functions. They make these very specific science references and then these very vague applications of their product.
So I guess kind of by analogy, they're basically saying, so our products include chemicals, and chemicals have a way of interacting with the body at a cellular level to do this. So because we include chemicals, we can do that.
Yeah.
So that's fine, but what chemicals? Because some can and some can't. You need to be more specific. Yeah.
My favourite part is when they explain this. Biotics Md is one of the first medical skincare companies to pioneer the use of DNA microarray assay technology to take clinical validation to the next level. They say, here is the process simplified. Cultured human dermal fibroblasts and epidermal keratinocytes, skin cells, are grown in 3D suspension to mimic the complete skin model. An active ingredient or final formulation is applied to this tissue for a specific period of time to achieve a desired response, at this stage being differentiation and proliferation. At this point, those cells are removed and the RNA is extracted from the cells and placed on the microarray panel, a measuring device with different genetic markers and variants attached. Once applied, we can now see if the genetic markers are turned on, upregulated, or turned off, downregulated. All fine.
Okay.
But particularly interesting since none of their website has any evidence other than them proclaiming it to be true that they've actually done any of these tests. There are no papers, no data, no science other than explanations of scientific concepts followed by vague assertions. Mm-hmm. They're not proving that they've done that. They've told us about a scientific technique and asked us to take their word for it that they're actually doing it. Secondly, it's interesting that they think that cell culture experiments directly translate into a response in human skin. It's not true. We've talked about it many times. You need to do it on the human skin, on the body. You can't just do it in the lab. That's not how it works. And thirdly, I think it's most interesting that they seem to think it's a positive thing to manipulate genetic expression in skin cells. In a lot of their things, they've said they want to encourage cells to increase genetic expression. If it's proven to be true that they change what genes are expressed with their products, which is already highly unlikely since they don't want to give us any mechanism for that actually happening, I'd like them to be pretty certain that they're not increasing cancer-associated genes. Because upregulation of certain genes causes cancer. We know it causes cancer. We don't want anything that might increase the risk of skin cancer. There's a lot of products that do this. They talk about putting growth factors on your skin and how that would be a good thing. I don't see how that's... Or injecting growth factors. Why would you want to do that? Overexpression of growth factors causes cancer. We know it causes breast cancer, for one. Basically, we've got another stupid skincare gimmick.
So I've been talking about the placebo effect regularly on this show for about 6 months now.
Is it 6 months? Jesus Christ.
Which is a long time.
That is a long time.
And a lot of material. So I wanted to start off...
Perfect to put in a book.
You think? Some sort of...
Placebo.
So I wanted to start off today with a quick recap on what we've talked about so far. This is previously...
The blurb to the book.
Previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Is what this is. So we talked about a study on arthroscopic surgery for osteoarthritis of the knee.
I remember that.
They took 180 patients with osteoarthritis of the knee, randomly assigned them to receive either surgery or placebo surgery. Patients in the placebo group received skin incisions and underwent a simulated debridement, but did not actually have the arthroscope inserted. The paper concluded, in this controlled trial involving patients with osteoarthritis of the knee, the surgery outcomes were no better than those of the placebo procedure, which for many people, including osteoarthritis researchers, said that this operation was a waste of time. But for fans of the placebo narrative, including Dr. Daniel Glasser, the neuroscientist who told The Guardian that saying, "I'm fighting off a cold," rather than "I'm coming down with a cold, will do something to your cold."
Yeah.
Why he thinks that, I've got no idea, because nerves, that was
basically it, isn't it? Yeah.
Because nerves. For fans of the placebo narrative, this paper shows the amazing power of the placebo effect, because the operation works just as well when you fake it, therefore fake operations work. Although I would all point out that the outcome measures for this paper were all actually self-reported by patients.
Yeah, so you're arguing it's a bad study.
Even the paper itself says, if the efficacy of arthroscopic debridement in patients with osteoarthritis of the knee is no greater than that of placebo surgery, the billions of dollars spent on such procedures annually might be put to better use. This study has shown the great potential for placebo effect with surgery, although it is unclear whether this effect is solely due to the natural history of the condition or whether there is some independent effect. So even leaving aside the biases that we know can be introduced by self-reported outcomes, the paper itself cautions that the apparent improvement in the placebo arm could just be the natural history of the condition.
Yeah, it says it's not clear whether it's the natural improvement, which we know happens, or a magical placebo effect that we've got no evidence for.
Yeah. So we talked about that. We talked about the claim that taking 4 placebos a day clears gastric ulcers faster than 2 pills per day, which was a study by the anthropologist Daniel Moorman and cited by Ben Goldacre in Bad Science. The problem is that Moorman's comparison of placebo arms of clinical trials is flawed from the off, because the effects measured in the placebo arms of clinical trials represent a pattern of non-specific effects unique to that study, including things which might be comparable across studies, such as rates of spontaneous improvement, but also things which are not comparable across studies, like the judgment of the clinicians involved, which means when you compare the placebo arm of trial A to the placebo arm of unrelated trial B, what you're actually doing is comparing the biases of the clinicians in trial A to the biases of the clinicians in trial B, a comparison which is therapeutically meaningless.
I mean, that's one of the things you're comparing. You're obviously also comparing the things that are likely to be consistent or may well be consistent, but one of the elements that you can't control for in any of these things.
In principle, the consistent things should cancel out.
Yeah.
In principle. But the biases aren't going to.
Yes, yeah.
Unless the researchers all have, unless it's the same researchers.
It's within the same,
same researchers, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but not only that, but the Ulster study in question doesn't actually talk about the number of pills. It talks about the frequency of administration. The effect is no longer significant when you restrict to only the most recent and more likely tightly controlled trials. And the paper referenced by Bad Science doesn't actually contain these data. This data is from a later paper by the same author. That author also being the guy who claims that placebos work better in Germany than elsewhere in the world. Moving on, we talked about a study in asthma which showed that fake inhalers work as well as real ones, provided your outcome measure is asking patients if they think their inhaler is helping. When you actually measure their lung function, then the placebo inhaler does nothing at all, while the real albuterol actually improves your breathing. We also talked about the claim that fake painkillers in a fancy branded box work better than fake painkillers in a plain box, provided your outcome measure is asking patients if they think their painkillers are helping. And even the original paper hypothesizes that the patients are reporting less pain because they're increased confidence that branded painkillers should be working. Are the patients actually in less pain, or are they reporting less pain because they think they should, because they're taking pills from a brand they've heard of? These data don't actually answer that question. We talked about patients having a dopamine response to being given placebos in a very strange study design where patients were told what percentage chance there was of them being given their real medication.
I remember that one.
We also talked about how it's not really a surprise that you get a dopamine response when somebody hands you something that you think you desperately need and that you think will make you feel better, because that's what dopamine does. Also, this study was conducted on just 35 patients. We talked about the claim that giving patients a muscle relaxant and telling them it's a stimulant will make them tense up tight and have faster reaction times, provided your outcome measure is asking patients what effect they think the pills are having. When you objectively test the reaction times, there was no effect. Patients reporting being more tense and uptight may have simply been responding to the experimenter effect. We've talked about the claim that pacemakers improve congestive heart failure after they've been inserted but before they've been switched on, provided that your outcome measure is asking the patients what they think. For several objective outcome measures, there was no significant improvement for the inactive pacemaker except for one measure, which was left ventricular outflow gradient, which was barely significant with P of 0.04, and not really a surprise in a paper which tests as many outcome measures as this one does. Not only that, but some patients in the placebo group were transferred to the active group after complaining their pacemakers didn't work, which we can reasonably characterize as p-hacking.
Yeah.
We've talked about how painting fake topical analgesics on your skin reduces reported pain when you lock the patient's hand in a vice, provided your outcome measure is asking the patient how well they think the analgesic is working. We also talked about how applying a different fake topical analgesic to your skin reduces reported pain when you fire lasers at a patient's skin, not just on a self-reported outcome this time, but also backed up by data from an fMRI, which it turns out was a tiny effect that the paper claimed could in fact just be due to reduced anticipation of pain rather than any reduction in physiological pain. We've also talked about the recent meta-analysis on open-label placebos, which shows that placebos work even when patients know what they are, except that the patients were told that they could expect some improvement from placebo, which introduces a large experimenter effect, and almost all of the papers in that analysis had an unknown risk for bias. We talked about Henry Beech's paper, The Powerful Placebo, still the most cited work in the medical literature on the placebo effect, and how none of the trials Beech has cited actually have any convincing evidence of a real therapeutic placebo effect. There was nothing there which could not be explained by some other mundane statistical or biological effect. And we've talked about the systematic reviews from 2001, 2004, and 2010 published by the New England Journal of Medicine, the Journal of Internal Medicine, and Cochrane, respectively, which found that in comparison with no treatments, there is no objective effect to placebo, and what subjective effects there are cannot be distinguished from bias. So that's what we've done so far.
Blimey, okay, good.
Where else can we go on this one? What other claims have been made for the magical power of the placebo effect? How about this one from Bad Science? Blackwell, 1972, did a set of experiments on 57 college students to determine the effect of colour on the effects elicited.
Colour of the pills or the college students? Just to be checking. I mean, this was a while ago, was it?
It's the pills.
Okay. Well, when was the study?
1972.
Just checking.
The subjects were sitting through a boring 1-hour lecture and were given either 1 or 2 pills, which were either pink or blue. They were told that they could expect to receive either a stimulant or a sedative.
Ridiculous that they're pink and blue. I mean, let pills be pills.
Afterwards, they found that colour had an effect on the outcome. The pink sugar tablets were better at maintaining concentration than the blue ones. Since colour themselves have no intrinsic pharmacological properties, the difference in effect could only be due to the cultural meanings of pink and blue. Pink is alerting and blue is cooling.
Is pink alerting?
Apparently pink's alerting.
Red is alerting. Yellow and black is alerting.
Yeah, but what is pink but pale red? So this paper was published in The Lancet in 1972. 100 college students were asked to take part in a study. They were told that they would receive either a stimulant drug or a sedative drug, and that the effects and side effects were explicitly laid out for them. So they were told you will get a sedative, which will have this effect, and these side effects. Or you will get a stimulant, which will have these effects and these side effects.
Okay.
6 effects and 6 side effects.
How did they determine that the lecture was boring?
I'll come to that.
Amazing.
6 effects and 6 side effects for each. So 6 effects for the sedative, 6 effects for the stimulant, 6 side effects for the sedative, 6 side effects for the stimulants. After reading the consent form, 44 of the 100 students declined to participate.
Wow.
Hashtag selection bias.
But wow, also. Half of them read the consent, went, nah, mate, nah.
Yeah.
Was it because the lecture was that boring?
Possibly so. I don't know if you've done the maths here, but 100 minus 44 is 56 students, not 57 as claimed in Bad Science, taking part in this study. The patients were then split into 4 groups. The first group was given 1 blue pill. The second group was given 2 blue pills. The third group was given 1 pink pill, and the final group was given 2 pink pills.
Okay.
All the pills were inert. There was no real drug involved here.
For a second, I misheard when you said they were split into groups, and I thought you said that the first student was given 1 blue pill. The second student was given 2 blue pills. Oh, God, student 44 is fucked.
He's just chucking it down at this point. The students were then sent into a 1-hour lecture, which may or may not have been boring, because even though Ben claims it is, that's his own spin on this. There's nothing in the paper. The paper is completely silent on how stimulating or otherwise the lecture was.
Really? That's just pure editorializing?
Yep.
Wow, okay.
Yep. Afterwards, the students were given, guess what? A self-reported outcome survey.
Sorry, I was trying to think whether it would have been possible to have contacted the researcher and find out that the lecture was boring in ways that wasn't mentioned in the paper. If you
possibly, although 40 years later,
yeah,
maybe just assumed it was boring because lectures are
boring.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's a pop science book anyway. So
it is a pop science book, but that was editorializing.
Yeah.
The students were given a self-reported outcome survey where they were asked to report the effects that they were experiencing on a scale of 0, not present, to 3, extreme, from the list of effects that they were told to expect to see.
Right.
Because telling them what effects they are going to encounter will not in any way influence them to report those effects, he says, dripping with sarcasm. But there were physiological changes measured too.
Okay.
The students took each other's blood pressure, pulse, and recorded pupil size.
What kind of students were they? What were they studying?
They were medical students.
Okay.
And the point of this paper was making a point to the class about placebos. That was the reason this paper existed. So what were the results? According to Bad Science, pink sugar pills were better at maintaining concentration than blue ones. This claim does not appear anywhere in the paper. Concentration is not even something they measured.
Wow, okay.
Of the stimulant effects that the students were told to expect, they were told they could expect to be more cheerful, more talkative, more alert, less drowsy, less sluggish, less tired, more tense, more jittery, more irritable, less relaxed, less calm, and less easygoing.
You could conflate alert with concentrate, I guess.
In which order did they do the taking the blood pressure and stuff and the answering the report?
Doesn't say.
Because if they did the taking the blood pressure and stuff before doing the report, they're going to feel more alert and more awake and more active.
Yeah, if something squeezed your arm. Yeah, that's true.
And just because they're chatting to each other, doing blood tests, when there's 44 and more of them in the room also doing those things.
Telling each other little jokes.
They're all just like chatting and using it as a DOS.
Talking about how boring that lecture was.
Yeah. Talking about how much better they can concentrate.
You're going to feel more awake after you've engaged with your classmates rather than when you've sat in a lecture theatre listening to somebody drone on.
Yeah, and also, was the taking of the blood pressure randomised, or was that within the group?
The thing is, this was an exercise for medical students to learn about the placebo, which is now being cited 40 years later as a truism about the world.
Right, okay.
The nothing in this asked the students to report how well they were able to concentrate. In fact, concentration is only referenced in one section of the paper, which says this: other complaints included difficulty in concentrating and dizzy feelings, 2 subjects each. So 2 students reported difficulty concentrating after taking the pills out of 56. Nothing in here actually says anything about students with improved concentration, and only talks about 2 students who struggled, and it doesn't say which colour tablets they'd taken. It just says that 2 students reported difficulty concentrating. Although Bad Science claims that pink pills help maintain concentration, the paper does not say that. In fact, with regard to the differences in effects broken down by colour, the paper doesn't really say much of anything at all. It says there were 2 significant differences due to colour. They are defining significant here as a p-value of less than 0.05, although they don't say what the p-value actually is. Just there's a note in the paper that says anything we claim as significant has a p-value of less than 0.05. Okay. So it doesn't give any actual p-values. It says there were 2 significant differences due to colour, both indicative of blue capsules producing more sedative effects than pink capsules. 66% of subjects on blue capsules felt less alert compared to 26% on pink, and 72% on blue capsules felt more drowsy compared to 37% on pink. There was also a tendency for those subjects on blue capsules to feel more sluggish.
Hang on, was that blue was more alert but more drowsy?
Blue was less alert.
Less alert. Sorry, I got the wrong way around.
Blue was more drowsy, which honestly are probably antonyms. It's saying the same thing 2 different ways.
Yes, yeah.
Although given that 66% of students reported one and 72% of the other, it's not.
They're close enough. They're relative antonyms. But
yeah.
I mean, but those numbers on the face of it look pretty strong. Then 66 versus 20.
66
20
versus 22. So 2 significant differences of the multiple comparisons made. So of the are you more or less jittery? No significant difference.
Gotcha.
Are you more or less easygoing? No significant difference. Only 2 things had any kind of significant difference. Blue capsules made you feel less alert, and blue capsules made you feel more drowsy. So that's not necessarily a surprise. This could be the result of the magical power of the magical placebo effect, which somehow modifies the physiology of the person consuming a blue pill in such a way that a pink pill doesn't. Or it could be that people are self-reporting what they think they should based on their pre-existing cultural biases, which associate the colour blue with sad, slow, down, and the colour pink with peppy, bubbly, and up. Or it could just be statistical noise stemming from the fact that this is a tiny study from 45 years ago, which makes multiple comparisons, and if you make enough comparisons, you're going to get some spurious results. And unless you can rule out 2 and 3 there, I'm not persuaded that we can say with any confidence that option 1 is the case and that the observed effect is a real therapeutic placebo effect inducing a real physiological change.
Well, I mean, what you'd do is you'd then do a follow-up study which just isolated those 2 variables and just focused in on those.
Yeah.
Where you weren't priming people necessarily.
That isn't the only thing Ben Goldacre has to say about pill colour in Bad Science, though.
No, it's not.
He goes on to say, another study suggested that oxazepam, a drug similar to Valium, was more effective at treating anxiety in a green tablet and more effective for depression when it was yellow.
What makes a green tablet anxious?
I mean, it's going to get swallowed. It's not.
That's true. That's true. It
I'd
can
be
see
worried
what's
about
happening
that.
in the future. Yeah. You wouldn't like me when I'm anxious.
The citation for this claim was a paper from the British Medical Journal in 1970 called Study on the Effects of Tablet Colour in the Treatment of Anxiety States.
Okay, good journal, good impact factor. Not
yes.
one of those pay-to-play ones
No.
that we hear about these days, that there are these big intentional hoaxes just solely to expose pay-to-play journals and not to carry any other ideological load.
Not at all.
Yeah.
The 48 patients in this study weren't actually given placebos. They were given real drugs. They were given oxazepam, but they were given different coloured tablets to see if that modified the efficacy of the intervention.
Okay, so it's 40-odd.
The study ran over 3 weeks, where patients were given either red, yellow, or green pills for a week each, and then changing.
Okay.
So at the end of 3 weeks, everyone had tried every colour.
Nice.
Just to be clear, the active drug was the same in each case. It was only the colour of the tablet which varied, and the order was randomised in order to control for the cumulative effect of the drug. So it wasn't just if everyone got red pills in week 3, that was when the drug had actually kicked in by that point.
Yeah.
So 48 patients suffering from anxiety were recruited. 28 of them also suffered with depression, and 17 with some sort of phobia, usually agoraphobia. They were given pills for 3 weeks of varying colours in a crossover design, and naturally, because this is placebo research, the results are a self-reported survey. So bias all round. In fairness to the paper, they also augment this with an assessment by a clinician.
Okay.
But the assessments were largely based on the clinicians going off what the patients were telling them. So the paper attempted to defend this by saying, though it could be argued that the physicians' ratings were based largely on the verbal report of the patient's progress during the previous week, they reflected equally the physician's critical appraisal of the patient's clinical state.
Okay, so the physician was just listening to what people said, but also they really thought it as well.
But basically, they're saying that although the clinical examination was largely based on what the patients told them, the clinicians also used some clinical judgment, which might be enough to completely counter that biased reporting, but probably wasn't.
Yeah.
Although they did instruct the patients to avoid talking about what colour pills they were taking that week with their clinicians.
Right.
Which is good. That's the right thing to have done.
Instructed them to avoid, so none of them did.
It doesn't say one way or the other.
Okay, so
although I'd hope that they would have reported that if that blinding was broken like that. So what were the results? Bad Science claims that green pills were better for anxiety and yellow pills were better for depression. Is that what this paper says?
No.
Does it fuck say this? Does it fuck? Patients were asked to rate their symptoms by making a mark on a 10-centimetre line. And clinicians then measured where the mark was on that line and took an average.
Okay.
When taking yellow pills, the patients reported a mean anxiety score of 3.9. When taking red pills, they reported a mean anxiety score of 3.7. And when taking green pills, they reported a mean anxiety score of 3.6. So 3.6, green pills, is the lowest score. Is that statistically significant? Is it shite?
Wow.
This is not a statistically significant finding. And the paper says it is not a statistically significant finding.
Jesus.
I'll repeat that because I was fucking astonished when I read this. The finding that green pills work better for anxiety than red or yellow pills is not statistically significant. This is the variation we would expect to see from chance.
Yeah, and the paper is explicit about that.
Yes.
It's not like the paper is
No, the paper says not significant. It's the same story for depression. 4.4 for red pills, 3.8 for green pills, 3.6 for yellow pills. Not a significant result. This is what you'd expect from random chance. So why the fuck Ben Goldraker is quoting them matter-of-factly in Bad Science is utterly beyond me. Not only that, but when you look at the physician assessment instead of patient-reported outcomes, you get a completely different set of results.
Completely different?
Well, not completely different, but according to the physician assessment, green pills were better for both depression and anxiety, and those results were not statistically significant either.
Yeah.
In fact, there is exactly one finding in this paper which is reported as statistically significant, which said that green pills are better for phobias based on the physician assessment data. This is a p-value of 0.01, less than 0.01. Bear in mind, this is 17 patients in the study had phobias. They couldn't obviously test the patients who didn't suffer from phobias for phobias.
17 in 3 groups.
So this is tiny numbers, 17
maybe
patients.
all equally distributed, maybe not necessarily all equally distributed.
We don't know that they're evenly distributed because they weren't recruited for phobia. They were recruiting for anxiety, and the phobia was kind of a coincidence, as was the patients with 28 patients with depression. That was a coincidence as well.
So we could be anywhere from 6 patients with phobias in each group to basically all of them, not quite all 17, because the maths didn't quite work out.
But we actually have no idea. The fact that some of the patients suffered from phobias is completely coincidental. Not only that, but while the physician assessment data shows that green pills are significantly better for phobias, the patient-reported data for the same thing for the phobias said red pills were better.
So it sounds like noise.
Yes.
It sounds like noise.
Basically. Again, this wasn't a significant finding in the patient-reported data. It was a not significant difference between the colours. And again, we are doing multiple comparisons here, so it's possible to even get that significant finding purely by chance.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Despite this being Ben's citation in Bad Science for the claim that green pills are better for anxiety and yellow for depression, this could just be a chance association. And the paper says this could simply just be a chance association. Once again, the purported evidence in favor of a real therapeutic placebo effect boils down to patient-described biased reports, statistical noise, and other clinically irrelevant crap.
Was there any other study that wasn't cited that covers colour? Because I'm sure I heard something about pain. Pain pills are better if they're X colour.
Not that I've investigated. I've only looked at the references in Bad Science.
Because it may be that there could be some other papers that are worth looking into in that area that Ben talks about, that he's amalgamating in his commentary without necessarily citing.
Yes,
if we're trying to be as kind as possible.
And I'm gonna keep looking for colour studies.
Pain and placebo is an entirely separate thing to talk about, though. Well, depending on the kind of pain, but
as we've talked about, you can modify the experience of pain without necessarily modifying any physiological pain.
Yeah.
And that can still be a positive outcome.
And that can actually be a useful thing.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not just pill colour which is claimed to have placebo effects. People also talk about how dramatic the intervention is and how that changes the placebo response. From Bad Science, more or less continuing from before, issues of form go much deeper than colour. In 1970, a sedative was found to be more effective in capsule form than pill form, even for the same drug in the very same dose. The capsules at the time felt newer somehow and more sciencey. The route of administration has an effect as well. Saltwater injections have been shown by 3 separate experiments to be more effective than sugar pills for blood pressure, for headaches, and for post-operative pain. Not for any physical benefit of saltwater injection over sugar pills, but because, as everyone knows, an injection is a much more dramatic intervention than just taking a pill. So this is a fairly well-recognised portion of the placebo narrative, that a more dramatic fake intervention will have a more dramatic placebo effect. Injections outperform capsules, which outperform pills, and so on. In Bad Science, Ben talks about these 3 separate experiments showing that saline injections outperform sugar pills for blood pressure, headaches, and post-operative pain. And usually what you might expect I would do at this point is to go and look at these 3 experiments and point out that they are flawed in some respect because of some confounding factor like spontaneous improvement or bias or whatever. But as it is, I've been talking for quite a while now and the show's kind of running over time, so instead I'm going to skip straight to the punchline. In 2015, the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology published a systematic review looking at exactly this question. From the paper, they say, it has been suggested that some placebo interventions might be associated with larger clinical effects than others. In a systematic review, we investigated whether there was evidence from direct comparisons in randomized clinical trials, including 2 or more placebo groups, supporting this hypothesis. So the authors searched the literature for randomized trials which contained more than one placebo arm in the same study.
Yeah.
They discarded the trials where there were multiple placebo arms, but they were the same types of placebo, so pill versus pill. Yeah. They didn't bother with those. They excluded studies which didn't measure any clinically relevant outcomes, so studies which had no patients, which is surprisingly common in the placebo research. They do studies on healthy people.
Oh, I see. When you said no patients, I think, what the hell is it? Can that even be? But okay, yeah.
No clinically relevant outcome. It's just what effect does it have on healthy people. Mm-hmm. And they graded the placebo interventions by how dramatic they were. They decided this based on how invasive the placebo was. So injections were judged as being more dramatic and invasive than pills.
Yep, surgery more so than that.
They did it on how time-consuming it was. So sham acupuncture is more time-consuming, than, maybe not more invasive than pills because the needle doesn't penetrate the skin, but it's certainly more time-consuming than pills. So placebo acupuncture is more dramatic than pills.
Also, I mean, you only know that the sham acupuncture doesn't penetrate the skin when you know it's sham acupuncture. The whole point of sham acupuncture is you think it is penetrating the skin. Yeah, so it's just as dramatic or theatrical.
And as a backup, if these rules didn't give a clear answer, they chose how close to the target organ is the intervention administered. So a sham inhaler is more dramatic than pills for asthma because you're taking it directly into the lungs, whereas a pill is just a pill.
The sham open heart surgery is...
And then they compared the differences in outcomes between the more dramatic and less dramatic placebos, factoring in the fact that many of these studies had a high or unclear risk of bias, and that blinding is often broken because placebos are necessarily different to each other, and that subjective outcome measures are prone to reporting bias. So they factored all of this in when they did the analysis. And they found that there is no association between how dramatic the fake intervention is and the observed placebo effect. There just isn't an effect there. The paper says, in the studies included in this review, more intense placebos are not consistently associated with larger effects than less intense placebos.
Gotcha. And when did this study come out?
2015. So
okay,
it's,
so it is
quite a new study.
It's new. It's
not something that we would have expected Ben to know about in bad
science.
science.
It's like 7 years post-bad science, basically, or 6 years post-bad science.
Now, the paper goes on to point out that this is based on a small amount of data, because it turns out there aren't very many studies that have got 2 different placebo arms, and that this is at variance with other research, such as the work by Daniel Moorman, which compares the placebo arm of trial A to the placebo arm of trial B and tries to draw conclusions based on that indirect comparison, a methodology that I have argued is flawed. But overall, it is not looking good for our friend the placebo effect. Fake arthroscopic surgery doesn't work. Telling your cold you're fighting it doesn't change it. 4 pills do not clear gastric ulcers faster than 2. Relaxants do not produce the effect of stimulants if you told your patient they've taken a stimulant. A dopamine reaction in response to you being given your much-needed medication is not a surprise, and pacemakers do not have clinically relevant effects before they're turned on. Fake analgesic cream does not numb your skin, and of course open-label placebos work because statistical effects apply no matter what you believe about the intervention, and breaking blinding like that fucks with your data anyway. This is foundational level epidemiology. Henry Beecher was full of shit, and none of his 15 papers he studied for the powerful placebo showed a convincing placebo effect. The colour of pills, at least on the data that I've looked at today, does not change how effective they are, and injections do not work better than pills, and the placebo effect is, in my very humble opinion, a modern medical myth. So, Liverpool Skeptics in the Pub is tonight in our regular venue, which is Dr. Duncan's on... I don't even know what road Dr. Duncan's is on. I know what road it's on. I don't know what that road's called.
St John's Lane?
It's by St John's Gardens, but I have no idea what that road is called.
I'm not sure.
It's got St John's in it somewhere, I think.
We've been meeting there for coming up 10 years now.
Well, you never need to know the name of the road.
That's true.
Yeah, I never know the name of any road, ever,
You can't
basically.
park anywhere nearby, so you're always walking there. You just need to know where it is
That's
and
true.
where it is in relation to other landmarks in Liverpool, and it's opposite the fucking gardens.
So that's from 8 o'clock if you're in the Liverpool area.
It's
come along
St John's Lane.
St John's Lane, is it? St John's Lane. Dr.
St John's Lane? I said St John's Lane.
You did say St John's Lane.
I actually knew.
Well done.
So if you're in the Liverpool area, you should come along to that. That's our social event. So we'll be having a drink and a chat. It'll be fun. You can come along. You could probably talk to Marsh there.
That's true. Yeah, I'll talk.
You can talk to Alice when you're there.
Yeah.
Alice will be there.
Can't talk to me. I'll be in Tenerife.
You'll be in Tenerife.
Those facts are unrelated.
We can Skype you in.
We could Skype you in.
We could. I mean, I'm trying to Skype in to join the QED management call, but the guys won't let me.
We're not having that.
No, you need a holiday.
They're not fucking letting me. It's a disgrace. They're going to choose a load of weird things when I'm gone.
Yeah.
Andy Wilson will have us doing something crazy.
He will.
That's what he's like. Yes, that's tonight. So come along to that if you're in the Liverpool area. Also, Patreon. If you like the show, if you like what Merseyside Skeptics does, if you enjoy the show, you can support the show on Patreon.
Yeah, we don't really mention it a lot, really.
Merseyside Skeptics. We don't bang on about this because we like people to give because they want to, not because we're kind of pushing them to.
Yeah, and we're going to record the show regardless.
Yes,
and we don't do anything extra for people who give us any money.
We don't do the perk things. We if you want to give us money because you want to give us money, that's awesome.
Throw us $1, it's fine.
And people sometimes, if they can't give money, they write in and apologise. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's really fine.
It's fine. All you need to do is convince someone else to give us the money and we'll consider it even.
But if you want to support what we do, a really effective way to do that is to donate via Patreon. As I said, it's patreon.com/MerseysKeptics. If you can't, don't worry about it. But if you can, it's really very, very appreciated. Aside from that, I think that is all we have time for.
I think so.
All that remains then is for me to thank Marsh for coming along today.
Cheers.
And thank you to Alice.
Thank you.
We have been Skeptics with a K, and we're going to go and enjoy the sun.
Bye now.
Bye.
Skeptics with a K is a production of the Merseyside Skeptics Society. For more information, visit our website www.merseysideskeptics.org.uk or email podcast@merseysideskeptics.org.uk.